wonderful worship today. Yeah, you can clap. It's okay. Thank you, God. All right, I want you to turn to Proverbs chapter 31. Proverbs 31. And of course, this is Mother's Day, and I want to talk to you on the topic Pictures of Mom. Pictures of Mom. And I want you to think back a little bit. Think back to those moments, those snapshots in your mind of the memories that you had of your mother, or maybe the memories that you now are building with your mom, and how precious those memories are. You know, photos play a particularly interesting role in our lives, don't they? Particularly in this modern technical world. You remember the days where you used to have film in a camera and you'd have to go take it in and get it developed? I'm giving my age away here, and you'd have to wait 2 or 3 days to get the picture back. Well, nowadays it's totally different, right? Some of us got hundreds on our smartphones and thousands on our computer of photographs, and some of you are really good at keeping those things organized. Some of us, on the other hand, are, we're lucky to throw them into a box and hope to sort them out eventually when we get old and retire one day. But nonetheless, we all have this passion for trying to keep memories in some way and to hold on to certain things. And that's what photos do. They capture for us something that we want to remember. They're unique to our family and to our experiences. Somebody once said that a photograph can be an instant of life. Think about that. An instant of life captured for eternity that will never cease looking back to you. It's interesting to think about. So while we all have these snapshots and even these literal photographs in our minds and physically, there is something that is unique to our experiences with our families, but the likelihood is that your experiences in relationship with your mother are very common compared to other people, for the most part. There are exceptions to that rule. My mother passed away in 2006, and there are snapshots that I have of her that I would bet are common with many of you in some of the memories that you hold for your mother, whether alive or not. And what Proverbs chapter 31 does for us, it provides some snapshots of a loving mother and a faithful wife. And there's just really no more powerful passage of Scripture that talks about the nobility and the virtue of motherhood than this passage. Now, Proverbs 31, if you're there, you'll notice that the beginning of the chapter starts with some wise words from a mother to her son who was a king. Now, often when we hear sermons about Proverbs 31, we begin in verse 10, and that's going to be kind of where we camp out today. But if you look at it in context, you have to understand that there is, in the beginning of this chapter, some words from a mother to her son who was a king, and the man's name, the king's name, is King Lemuel, which I think is French for the donkey. Lemuel. I started to say another word, but my mother is watching, bless her heart, and so... so there's this king here, and he is ruling, and his mother is writing some words to him, and it's very funny when you look at these words, how common they are even today. So these words to this king are words like, don't chase women, don't get drunk. Part of the words there are, give the strong wine to the poor so that they can forget their troubles. There's some of that. Have mercy on the weak is what she instructs her son. And be fair and be just. And isn't it just like a mom to say those things to her son? So that's how the chapter begins. And in verse 10 through 31, though, is where we're going to talk about today. These verses are an acrostic poem. This is poetry in the Hebrew language. And it's really very beautiful. Each of the verses begin with a successive letter of the Hebrew alphabet. So as you look at these verses, each one of those verses begins with a letter of the Hebrew alphabet in order. And so it's poetry in motion here. And so let's read it together, beginning in verse 10, chapter 31. An excellent wife who can find? And that's the question for the ages, isn't it? This is what I want to tell my son. Man, it's hard to find an excellent wife, but you will. I have. I'm thankful. It says this, she is far more precious than jewels. So the inherent value of a loving mother and a faithful wife is mentioned here. Verse 11, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and she will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm all the days of her life. She seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. Now, I don't know if you want to share that phraseology with your wife. Honey, you're like a ship. Not the best thing to say, but in the Hebrew language, this made perfect sense, okay? She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from afar. She rises while it is yet night and provides food for her household and portions for her maidens. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands, she plants a vineyard. She dresses herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hand to the distaff. Her hands hold the spindle. She opens her hand to the poor and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid of snow for her household, for all her household are clothed in scarlet. In other words, she keeps them clothed and protected even in the cold weather. She makes bed coverings for herself. Her linen is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She delivers sashes to the merchant. Strength and dignity, look at this, strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the days at the time to come, is what it says. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praises her. This is what he says about her. Here's the quote for the husband who is praising her. He says this, "Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all." Verse 30, charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain. Beauty is fleeting. But a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the gates. What a wonderful, wonderful passage. And there are 4 snapshots of motherhood in this passage, and I want to share them with you. Snapshot number 1, her hands work. Her hands work. When you read through this passage, you get a clear idea that this is a woman who is engaged with her family and who is working very, very hard. Someone once said that the phrase working mother is redundant. That's really true, isn't it? I mean, to be a mother means to set yourself to a lot of work. And in this text, we see mothers, this mother that does all kinds of work. Let's look at it. She sews, verse 13, 19, and 22. It says she selects wool and works with willing hands. She shops, verse 14, bringing her food from afar. She cooks, verse 15, she provides food for her household. She gardens, verse 16, she plants a vineyard. She rises early, verse 15, she gets up while it's still dark. Verse 18, she stays up late. Her lamp does not go out at night. Verse 27, she isn't lazy. Look at what it says. She watches over the affairs of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. And once you do all these things, this is kind of the way that you look. Right here. Right there. Now, this is a picture of one of our moms, and you can figure out who that mom is. And I asked for permission to use this. What a snapshot that is, right? Of a mother who has worked really hard for her family and for her children. I mean, this captures a lot about motherhood. Look at the expressions of the kids. You know, one's asleep, the other one's indifferent, the other one's pulling her hair, and she's just wiped out. I mean, this is kind of a snapshot of motherhood. The ideal here is obvious, and many of you, whether you've captured this in photographs or not, you know that there is work inherent in the job of being a mom, if you're a good mom. If you're a good mom. If you're a virtuous mom, if you're a noble mom, you work hard for the sake of your family. And that's just the truth. Here's the idea, is that a good, noble mother sacrifices for the sake of the home. In whatever way that gets expressed in your family, she sacrifices for the sake of the home. And mothers tend to do lots of work behind the scenes and a lot of work that nobody notices. And I want to remind you, moms, that God sees. God knows. He knows. He understands. And all your work is not in vain. It's really not. All those little things are not in vain, that they are an investment in a dividend that will bring returns in the long term. And many times that dividend is not noticed by us children until we get to be parents ourselves, right? And we go, man, I realize now what my mom did for me. And that's part of the blessing of being a parent, is understanding what your parents did for you. So she works hard, is the first snapshot. The second snapshot is this: her mouth speaks. Her mouth speaks. Her hands work, her mouth speaks. Somebody once said that the best academy, the best school, is a mother's knee, mother's lap. Isn't that true? Think of all the instruction that you got from mom sitting on her lap. Verse 26. Look at what the writer says. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. Now, many of you guys can go back and remember some of the lessons that your mother taught you, right? And they are kind of generic in nature. Be generous with others. Be patient. Don't bend your brother like that. Those kinds of things. Support those you love. See good in other people. Remember what's important in life. Those are kind of the things that we pick up from mom. The application here is twofold, and it's really important for us to understand this. Because when you look intently and deeply at verse 26, what the writer does not include is almost as important as what he does include. What he does not include here is a specific, particular lesson that his mother taught him. What he remembers as he rewinds the tape, as he remembers that snapshot, he remembers that what she taught was wise. It was practical for life. The ideal here is just about everything that I really needed to know I learned from mom. That's true, isn't it? That's really true. So there's a reflection here upon her character, not the particular lessons. So she spoke with wisdom, and kindness was on her lips. Gentleness from a mother's lips is the idea. Teaching us to be kind, to be patient, to be generous. These are not particular lessons. More so, they are ideas about mom's character. And those are the things that we remember most. Maybe you don't remember particular lessons, but you know the kind of person that she was in those lessons and through those lessons. If there's anything that you see from Proverbs 31, it's this. You see a mother that has a strong, instrumental presence in the home. She's engaged. She's not just skipping through. She's engaged. She's influential. She's prominent. And she is instructing her children. And here's the danger in today's crazy, busy world, is that mothers forget those moments of teaching from their lips that are vitally important. So, if words express character, as the passage is indicating here, if words express character, and they do, and therefore words matter, here's the question, moms. What are you saying? What are you saying to your kids? Not just with your words, but through your words. What are you saying about character? Your character and the character that your children need. May this be a good reminder that from your lips flow beliefs and values and mindsets that your kids will possess. And what you say is vitally important. And most of you, if not all of you, are doing a wonderful, wonderful job of instructing your kids. And what a blessing that is. So that's snapshot number 2. Number 1, her hands work. Number 2, her mouth speaks. Snapshot number 3, her heart loves. Her heart loves. I mean, motherhood and love are kind of synonymous, aren't they? You talk about redundancy. They really are. Is there anything on this earth that represents unconditional love more than the love of a mother for her child? Really think about it. Outside of God's love for us, is there anything on this earth that reflects true, pure, unconditional love? Like the love of a mother. Mothers would give their lives for their kids. Mothers would sacrifice all for their children. And that love, because I've seen it, that love is not kind of a wishy-washy emotional thing. It's not a sappy thing, although sometimes it is with moms, right? But there is strength in it. There is dignity in it. My wife would lay down in traffic for her children. And that's noble. And it's something that in today's world lasts and lingers. Despite all the craziness and all the bad that we see in our world, we see moms who take up the challenge of being the kind of mother that God is describing here. And it's a wonderful and it's a noble thing to do. I remember my wife with our kids when they were little. These are the snapshots I have of Tammy being in the bed with Ryan and Brandon and Kaylee and saying to them somewhat the same thing individually when they were little, I love you to the sky and back. And they would say, I love you to the moon and back. She would say, I love you to the farthest star and back. And it would just keep going. And this pure love that's expressed is amazing. It's real. Look at verses 11 and 12. The writer is saying this, and the reason that this connotes love is the ideal here that the husband is reflecting upon his wife. The kinds of thoughts that he has for her are captured here in verse 11 and 12. Look at what it says. The heart of her husband trusts in her. Isn't that a beautiful phrase? Is there nothing more that you value than the feeling of security and trust that you get in relationship to your wife being a good mother? There's nothing just about more important than that. You feel this sense of security that this woman that you're married to is giving all she has in the form of unconditional love to her children, to your children. It says, the heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good, not harm, all the days of his life. So as he's rewinding the tape, he's thinking with fondness about this woman that he's married to and the kind of mother that she is. The Amplified Bible says it this way. The Amplified Bible is a Bible that kind of adds to the literal translation of the Scripture, but it does so consistently with the original languages. It helps us to understand the context a little bit more. The Amplified Bible says in verses 11 and 12, look at what it says. It says, the heart of her husband trusts in her confidently and relies on and believes in her securely, so that he has no lack of honest gain and no need of dishonest gain. She comforts, encourages, and does him only good as long as there is life within her. Here's the point. And this is really captured in Proverbs 31. Here's the point. We've talked about sacrifice. Her hands work. She's diligent. She works hard. Her mouth speaks. That kind of sacrifice for the sake of family communicates something. Sacrifice communicates significance. When you sacrifice for someone, as mothers do, you are telling your kids how much they matter. You're telling your husband how much your home matters. You're esteeming what is valuable in this world that the world is devaluing, and that's the home. That the home is the place that we give our best effort to. Not just our leftovers, but the home is what we work for, and the marriage is what we strive for, and the kids are what we will kill ourselves for. It's worth it. It's valuable. That's the kind of sacrificial love, not the fleeting emotion, but the kind of sacrificial love that is mentioned here. Erich Fromm said this. He said, a mother's love is peace. He said, it need not be acquired. It need not be deserved. And we're hearing kids scream right now. Let me out! How appropriate on Mother's Day. We can't even get you a moment's quiet in here. I go to church to be away from it, and I can't get away. It's great. She loves with her heart. You know, I've told you many stories about my mom and my upbringing, and this week I've kind of felt, I don't know, a little bit ashamed in some sense, because I've told stories about the chaos of my home, being raised in an alcoholic family, a lot of craziness, a lot of stuff that went on. And part of the lesson I've learned as I've grown older is that I just didn't honor my mother as I should have. Because despite her brokenness, which she had, she was a woman that, even in that brokenness, tried to love us. And I realize that now, and I didn't realize it when I was younger. Some of you come from the same homes, and you struggle with resentment, maybe guilt, some bitterness toward your mom. But maybe you can see through to those snapshots of those moments that you did have. Not every moment was right. Remember, the hard snapshots are the ones in between the good ones, right? The days in between, the ones you put in the album, are the hardest ones. And some of you remember those. You need to remember the other ones. And God has taught me to remember the other ones. And to realize how much my mom really did love me. I remember my mother. My mother was a nurse's aide, made minimum wage. Some of you who are familiar with nursing homes, you know what a nurse's aide does in a nursing home and the kind of work that she does. She did it because she loved old people. She was uneducated. She dropped out of school in the 9th grade and got married. And my dad was uneducated. He was a construction worker. Minimum wage too, pretty much. So we were po. We couldn't afford the R at the end of poor. That's how po we was. And then, much of that money was just kind of squandered on beer and stuff. So we didn't have much. But I do have these moments where I remember, and I want to honor my mother for them, because she did work hard. Despite all the other stuff, I remember seeing her walk to work many days in the heat in North Texas to go to work and to do something I would never do. But she did it for the sake of her family so we could get by. I remember on my 14th birthday, I kind of complained leading up to it. I didn't have a bicycle, and I wanted a 10-speed bicycle on my birthday. Everybody else had one, and my mother got that message, and she worked overtime, and I was very surprised. On my 14th birthday, they rolled in a brand new 10-speed bicycle that my mother had worked overtime to give me. Those are the memories that I have. Those are the snapshots that I have. And those snapshots illustrate for me what a mother's love is truly like. It's hard to explain it, isn't it? It's hard to capture in words. But that kind of love, emulated for me, is the kind of love that I want to have for my kids. And you moms exemplify that better than any place else in the world. And what you need to remember is that it's noble, that it's virtuous. And in this world where it's taboo not to give yourself for the sake of your family, where you don't find yourself, you mothers and grandmothers and great-grandmothers, you sacrifice for the sake of your family. It is noble, and it is of God. And you need to remember that. Which leads me to the fourth snapshot. The fourth snapshot is this. She showed me God. She showed me God. William Thackeray said, "Mother is the name for God in the lips and hearts of little children." Isn't that true? They learn about God and His character through mom. Here's the axiom for you and me, is that what we grow up loving, we end up wanting to resemble. And as we emulate the love that mom had for us and the way that she showed us God, we become God-like. And we are people of character because of the kind of example that mom had to us. And it's a beautiful picture. Look in verses 30 and 31 as we finish today. This is how it ends. So you got chapter 31 of Proverbs, and it has 31 verses. Look at how it ends. Charm is deceitful and beauty is vain. Is that a message that we need in today's world? Absolutely. Is that a message that young girls need to hear in today's world? Charm is only deceitful. It's on the outside, and beauty is fleeting. And a mother represents true inner beauty. There's nothing more beautiful than a mother who is of noble character. I used to tell my daughter when she was younger, she'd be trying on dresses. And I would say to her, Kaylee, does the dress make you pretty or do you make the dress pretty? She said, I make the dress pretty. I said, you're right. And I try to remind her, she's 14 now, what true beauty is, what inner beauty is really all about. Moms exemplify that inner beauty by their work, by their sacrifice, by who they are. So charm is deceitful, beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised, the Bible says. Give her the fruit of her hands. The writer is saying here, she's earned her reward. Let her have it, and let her works praise her in the city gates. Abraham Lincoln said, listen to what he says, I remember my mother's prayers, and they have always followed me. He says, they have clung to me all my life. He says, I would not be the person I am apart from my angel mother. Moms, to the world you might just be one person. You may feel insignificant. It's a big world, a lot of people, a lot of needs. To the world, you might just be one person. But to one person, your child, you could be the world. You have such amazing influence. You have such amazing power. You have such amazing privilege. Is there a greater thing in all of life than to invest in the heart and soul of a child and to see that child grow up, to have a level head, and to love the Lord? There's nothing greater. And it's worthwhile. And that's what I'll remind you of today. It's worthwhile. Snapshots, hands working, a mouth speaking, a heart loving, and a godly character that exemplifies God. Commit yourself to those memories to be made. Make sure that your kids have those snapshots of mom, because those are the ones that will last. And those are the ones that will make the big, big difference in the long term. May it be so. Let's stand for closing prayer.